What is your relationship with time? Are you wired and tired, stressed and overwhelmed, busy and going nowhere? Or just want to scale your business? Welcome to Take Back Time with your host, Penny Zenker. Penny focuses on books, strategies, tools, and tips to help you work smarter and approach your time more strategically. As a result, you can have more energy, focus, and get more done in less time. Be more efficient and effective. Get ready to take back time.
Hello and welcome to Take Back Time. My name is Penny Zenker and I'm your host. Today, and on this show, we talk about tips and tricks and strategies to help you make the most of your time. It's clear that you can't really take back time that you've already spent. But at the same time, you can invest your time wisely. You can think and act more strategically so that in essence, you're taking back time in the long run. And so today we're going to talk about one of the things that actually disrupts our ability to use our time most wisely, and that can affect us in the long run as well. And that's overwhelm. So many people today feel like they've got so many activities, responsibilities, and different types of projects and tasks that have to be done, and they have a hard time identifying which is the most important priority and really just want to escape overwhelm. So today I'm excited to talk about how to escape overwhelm, and I'm here with Francis Wade. He is the author of Perfect Time-Based Productivity, and he's quite the time management guru. He's also a consultant and a business columnist, but he really considers himself and really is an innovator in the area of time management, is involved in some very interesting projects, which maybe he'll give us a peek into. And he's a fantastic writer and writes a lot about his innovations and philosophies. And I'm excited, Francis, to have you here today and to talk about escaping overwhelm.
Thanks, Penny. It's my pleasure to be here.
So is there anything that the audience needs to know about you? I just did that short introduction. Why did you get this fascination with time management?
Well, as the audience can probably tell, I don't have an accent that sounds like...
I don't hear an accent.
So I was born in Cape Cod, okay? True story. Is
that true? Okay.
Yeah, it's true. But I grew up in Jamaica, returned to the States for 20 years, and then came back to Jamaica in 2005. And in all the sort of going back and forth, I developed a real North American sensibility around time and being productive. And when I came back to Jamaica, I was severely confronted by the difference in culture.
Oh, yeah.
We're very, very unproductive here in Jamaica by any measure. And I found myself being way less productive than I used to be. And I tried to figure out why. I figured it had something to do with me at some level. And the more I dug, the more I started to read and started to write and started to explore. And I started to bounce into all sorts of psychological research, some of which I'll share in just a minute, that was applicable to everyone's situation, but it applied to me and I was able to use it to good effect.
Awesome.
That's why I'm so interested.
I can understand that, right? When you think of Jamaica, you think of very relaxed, right? That's where we go for vacation,
right.
Sit on the beach. And so I'm sure that if you want to get something done quickly, that's probably not the place that you'd want to go to be in the fast pace, get it done.
Exactly. And it's easy to sort of become sort of just as unproductive. But I've been struggling to not do that. It's a struggle that's given me my impetus to write and to present and do all these things.
Very cool. Well, today we want to talk about overwhelm, right? And escaping overwhelm. What do you think is different today than 10, 20 years ago that has created people to be in such a state of overwhelm?
Well, there's way more triggers in our environment, in our immediate environment, than there ever used to be. We see more information in a month than our grandparents saw. Sorry, we see more information in a day than our grandparents saw in a month. And we're just not trained to deal with the volume of information and the amount of triggers and the proximity of the mobile internet. We're not geared for the world that we're in right now. We're geared for a world that's more similar to the world that they grew up in. So the volume of information, the ubiquity of mobile computing, the fact that we've gotten into brand new smartphone habits, they all accumulate. They pull on our attention. They distract us. They cause us to respond. They lead to the fear of missing out. And it all has an impact on our psychology that, from the research I've done, psychologists haven't really caught up with the changes that we're undergoing on a daily basis. They're moving far too slow to keep up.
Well, let me ask you a question. So you saying that that it's the triggers and it's the technology and it's all these outside forces. So it's not our fault, right? Is that what you're saying? Nothing to do with it. Oh, okay.
In a minute, I'll tell you why it's a little bit of our fault.
Okay.
Because you could do what some have done, which is to escape to a beach in Jamaica and just pull out a big thing of ganja and do that thing. But most of us who live responsible adult lives don't have that luxury, and we must cope with the life that we're in at the moment. However, if we bring over the practices that we taught ourselves when we were teenagers, that's when we suffer.
Right. We need to build new habits. We need to have different coping strategies in order to make ourselves work in today's, society. I totally get that. What's interesting is, I don't know if this is kind of relevant, but we have to come up with strategies that work for us in any stage of our life, in any situation and circumstance. And I use a lot of structure and I create a lot of things around me to support me because I'm naturally squirrel. I don't know if I have, APH, whatever they call it, but not to give anything a label, but you know what I mean? It's like we are, it just happens to be my tendency. It's not just that there's a lot of information out there that makes it 10 times worse. Even in my head with all the ideas that come to me, I have to be able to just manage that. It's just as bad as, as the internet. And so I see that for people and the challenge is creating those structures.
Right.
How did we get here? What's the psychological? You said psychology is trying to catch up. Tell us a little bit about what you've researched and seen around the psychology of this overwhelm we have today.
Sure. I had to go back to some pretty old research from 1926. A researcher by the name of Bluma Zeigarnik. She was a Russian psychologist. And what she discovered is that unfinished tasks stick around. They have a persistence, and our mind, our subconscious mind, pings us with reminders of tasks it believes we're not going to fulfill.
Yes. I mean, everybody can relate to that because it's an open loop. And whenever we have an open loop, it sits there and it takes up energy. And I constantly get pinged with those kinds of things until they're resolved, until they're closed. So I totally get that.
Right. And in my training, we actually call it a pop-in. The worst manifestation of it, we call that a pop-in. So a pop-in is when you're deep in sleep and about 1 a.m., all of a sudden, a thought pops into your dreams or into your subconscious, pings your conscious mind, and you jump out of your sleep and your heart is racing and your palms are sweaty and you're wide awake because you just remembered that there's an unfinished task that you didn't manage. And it's either in jeopardy or it's already a problem or you've got to remember to do it. Either some people would do it right then they'll grab up their smartphone and send that email at 1 a.m. or they'll remind themselves to do it at 6 a.m. But it's called a pop-in, and it's the sort of the most dramatic example that I could think of the Zeigarnik Effect, which is that it wakes you out of your sleep and gets that adrenaline immediately pumping. It's not a pleasant feeling.
Right. And that sleep can be, also the whatever we're focused our attention on, right? At that time, it might be sleep, but if we're focused really intently on something else and it pops in, like have you ever been in a conversation with someone?
Right.
And then all of a sudden it disrupts the whole conversation because it comes in and you say, oh, I got to remember to do X.
Right.
And it breaks the energy that you've got going with that person or whatever it is that you're doing. And it is, it's as much of a distraction as your cell phone or anything like that. So that's key. So how do we manage these pop-ins?
Well, the funny thing is that your subconscious mind, sorry, only cares about the tasks that it thinks you're going to forget about. So it doesn't care about the ones. You could have 5 million that you're managing really well and that you're on top of. You properly schedule them. You put them in your calendar, your calendar blocking, and you're using all the fanciest techniques. It'll care about that one
that you didn't write down.
That you didn't write down. It doesn't care about the 5,000. It cares about the one. And
right,
as
because
long as
it knows that if you wrote the other ones down, that you got this.
Right, exactly.
You didn't write it down.
Right. So funnily enough, someone who has, and this is sort of a point of contention, and when I introduce it to groups for the first time, the sense of overwhelm that you have has little to do with the total number of tasks you're trying to manage, and everything to do with the number that you're not managing. So, for example, if you're managing 10 tasks and you only have one that you're not managing, and I have 1,000 and I have one that I'm not managing, research says that we would suffer the same loss of peace of mind, because that one is the one that the Zeigranik Effect and your subconscious cares about.
Interesting.
It forgets about the 10,000.
Right. So it doesn't matter that I'm handling 10 times more than you're handling.
Doesn't care.
We're going to emotionally, if I call it that, suffer in the same way and at the same level because we've got that open task. That's really, really interesting.
Yeah. And unfortunately, of course, we're not taught this kind of thinking, and we're not taught this fact. So people, in their efforts to escape overwhelm, they try to do different things. Like they try to ignore it. That doesn't work. They try to cut back on their total set of commitments. And that may work. And I'll explain why it may work in a minute. But ultimately, it's not the right solution. The right solution is to...
Band-Aid.
Right. It's a Band-Aid. Exactly. The right solution is to upgrade your methods so that you can manage more time demands. That's the ultimate answer. That's the only one that your mind will really be satisfied with, is to improve and keep on improving so that there are fewer and fewer tasks that you're not managing. Mm-hmm. That's what gives you the peace of mind that allows you to escape overwhelm.
But is it really possible to write down everything? Like that's, I once had a client who he had two to-do lists, right? He had the to-do list for today, and then he had the someday list. Now, this list was, no joke, 10 pages long. Mm-hmm. And it caused him a lot of stress to actually know that there was 10 pages of things that were to be done someday, right? That he had to constantly look over and see what he needed to do. So how do we handle that? That seems like a piece that creates overwhelm in itself,
Yeah, it's such a great example, because he's using a someday list as a later list.
Yeah.
To be strict about it. Yeah. And
he's capturing everything, right?
Right. He's capturing everything, but his system isn't a match for his commitments. In other words, the subconscious doesn't buy it. So he's following everything to the T, but his subconscious doesn't believe that his system is working. So it's seeing a gap. I mean, this is one of those things where we can fool ourselves, but we can't fool our subconscious, because it's smarter than we are. It's good. It's a good thing, right? It's smarter than we are. It figures out when there's a gap. So having this sort of sense of overwhelm is actually a leading indicator to us that our system is faulty. We consciously may think, no, I've been following this system to right down to the last degree. I have every single list. I have everything. But your subconscious is just that little bit smarter, and it'll look for the point of weakness. And if it detects the weakness, it'll wake you up in the middle of the night just like anyone else.
Very interesting. And it's, I always say that anytime you get what I call an unproductive emotion that comes up, and I call it unproductive only because if we stay in it, it becomes unproductive. So overwhelm would be that kind of emotion, any kind of obsession, like anger, too much frustration, sadness, or maybe in the other extreme, like an apathy and just not caring anymore. Anytime you're there, it's a great trigger for you to see that you've been triggered. Something's not working. right? And instead of ignoring it, to embrace it and try to see, okay, how do I shift this? So that overwhelm can be that. It's just to recognize, okay, cool, I recognize something's not working. So let's figure out what I need to do to change it.
Right. And that takes a pretty strong sort of sense of self, high level of awareness to be able to relate to it that way. So you're absolutely right. Most of us don't, of course.
Right. So what do they do?
Most of us just suffer.
I happen to be very fortunate. I do have that sense. And so I think I don't stay in those emotions as, I seem to recognize it and then look for a shift. What do people do when they don't recognize it?
Well, the other option, which doesn't work, is that they copy. They copy someone else. They copy a mentor, or they read a book and the book says, follow this habit, call it that, follow this practice, use this app, and only use it use it in the way in which it's being prescribed by the book or the program or the training or the
kind of a one size fits all. Like
one size fits all.
Here, this is going to fit you.
Unfortunately, all the research says that doesn't work. The far better approach is to find a way to understand what you're already doing in enough depth that you can apply what we call ETAPs. And I'll explain that in a minute, but it's basically understanding where you are now with respect to all of the practices that make up your system so that you can improve them slowly but steadily.
Distractions are the enemy of productivity. Go to distractionquiz.com and find out your distraction profile. Are you a time zombie or a hamster? Take this free distraction quiz today to rate your ability to focus on what keeps you from being a wizard. Go to distractionquiz.com.
So kind of identify what already works for you in some areas. Exactly. And then improve them and also apply them to other areas, right? I know people who are really phenomenal at work, but when it comes to doing stuff at home, right, then everything falls by the wayside. So that's what I'm hearing you saying is identify what's already working for you and then make it better.
Right. And it's even well, the analogy I use is of a triathlete, and I used to do triathlons regularly. And when I did them, so there was swimming, biking, and running. But if you're doing longer races, it's also important to do other things like lift weights, rest, and manage your nutrition in a
very important
particular way. So these aren't the habits that people see when you're racing, but they're just as important to get you to the finish line. And being a great triathlete, especially a long distance triathlete, means managing all of these disciplines at a particular level of skill. And as you can imagine, the weakest one would be the one that would hold you back in a given race. And you're always sort of confronting the question of, which one do I improve next? Do I go for the strength? Do I go for the awful weakness? And as you look at which one to improve, there's many dimensions. There might be knowledge that you're missing. There might be practice. There could be awareness that you need to have. Maybe you're not motivated enough. Going to the pool is always, so it gets more dicey and more difficult or more complex, sort of, as you deal with yourself and you're honest with yourself as to what do I need to bring to the party so that I can improve the disciplines I need to improve.
So, so what would you say, I have these 10 fundamentals that I talk about how to get people into the productivity zone. I think that you have some fundamentals that you've uncovered as well. So let's talk about what are your fundamentals that can, tell me how they work and what they can do for us.
Right. Well, I tell folks well, everyone probably knows, or not everyone can remember, but there was a time when we didn't know what time was, because time is a taught lesson. So somewhere around 6, 7, or 8, someone, a teacher or a parent or a brother or sister, taught us the concept of time. It's actually an instruction. Somebody discovers it on their own. Shortly after we learned and started using the concept of time, we started to create what I call time demands. So a time demand is an internal, individual commitment to complete an action in the future. It's a psychological object, so it only exists in your mind and your mind only. It's triggered by all sorts of outside influences, but it's kept in your mind as a marker of your commitment to complete all of your objectives that can't be completed in the moment. Mm-hmm. And that happens around ages 9 or 10. Around ages 12 or 13, you start to experience the importance of keeping these time demands around for longer than just a moment. You realize that they're slippery little suckers and they'll just disappear. So you've got to develop some habits and practices in order to allow them to persist long enough that you can not suffer from the Zeigranik Effect and so that you can accomplish your objectives. So you start to develop some practices. So by the time you get to around 18, 19, you have practices in place, and they're the ones that get you through high school, college, early adulthood, and for many, many people, and it used to be the case, they would get you through your entire career in the case of our grandparents. Mm-hmm. However, we're not so lucky. We have to keep upgrading our fundamentals, as you said, because life is changing so often, as we established at the beginning of the call. The technology, the information, the mobility, the internet, they're all pressuring us to take it to the next level. So what folks don't know that we really could know or should know is that the 7 practices, the 7 fundamentals, capturing, emptying, tossing, acting now, storing, scheduling, and listing, we're already doing them. The question is, what did we teach ourselves to do? And how well are we doing them with respect to what we're trying to accomplish today? So for most folks, there's a gap because the teenage practices that were fine when we were 16 don't work when we're 32. They don't work as well. They're 1973 is not 2018. No, it's a whole totally different era. So the first step of the ETAPS process is E for evaluation. Is to evaluate and to self-discover, what did I teach myself? How well am I doing each of those 7 practices against world-class standards? And you develop a profile which says, okay, here's how I'm doing in this area, that area, the other area. And for most folks, this is sort of, in a way, you're revisiting the past because you put this all into motion. You created this system, usually without any help or without any assistance. It was sort of a magical thing that you did. However, the magic has probably sort of run dry now that you're a full-blown adult. So this is a sort of an introspective exercise to understand, what did I put together and how well is it working for me today?
Okay, so that's the first segment, which is the evaluate and discover, to see where, what habits and practices have I created to this point, and then kind of to say what's working and what's not working. Right.
So we've collected data from about 200-300 people who've done our programs and compared their profiles against each other. I wish I could say we had a grand revelation and sort of brilliant insight, but it just seems like people are sort of sputtering along, making up things as they go along in their teens. So the results don't look uniform, and they don't tell this awesome story. It just seems like we're struggling in our teens to kind of put something together. And I know that's
because there's no education. There is a challenge.
Absolutely nothing.
There is no class that you go to at an early age that can teach you how to
capture,
organize better, how to capture, So say those 7 again. You went through them
capturing,
really fast. Capture, emptying,
tossing, acting now, storing, scheduling, and listing. Right? Yes. So we don't have any courses that help us to be better at that. I haven't seen it, with my kids going through elementary school or middle school or high school. They're just now starting to put some very basic things into college, but it's too late.
Like you said, they've already, created their processes. I'm working, and I know you are too. We're working with, adults in the workplace.
Right.
And when you don't have the practices, it's much harder to learn them later and to unlearn. You can do that. I do believe that anything that's learned can be unlearned,
right.
But there is a harder process to do that, to unlearn and interrupt old behavior patterns so that you can replace them with new ones.
Yeah, here's a tragic example. I worked with a Harvard graduate, a brilliant fellow who has very close to photographic memory. And he says that he took no notes during his time at Harvard because he could remember everything.
Okay. Wow.
And it's believable because the guy is brilliant. However, the guy is brilliant around content, but ask him to manage his time demands, and he's like a beginner.
Yeah.
It's like a total disparity between his super high skill in one area and his abilities and his capacity, but he's still managing time demands with what we call white belt skills, which are the lowest skills, like a novice. He's trying to use memory, and his memory is a bit older than when he was at Harvard. So his memory for time demands just doesn't work the way it does for understanding his course material.
Yeah.
So he's struggling, and if he had been taught just the basics, and here's what's going to happen to you in the next few years, you've got to revisit, you got to find apps that work for you, you've got to find new models. If he'd just been told that at an early enough age, he'd probably be a different person today. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, absolutely. So teachers, if you're listening out there, educators, people who are changing, looking for change in the system, please add something like that. Also what I see a lot of is, and I believe that it plays an important role in how people manage their time demands, and is getting people to think more strategically, right? We're very tactical in the way that we think and the way that we operate. And so that has a big impact on organizations and their growth, because when they bring people up in the workforce and they bring them from, let's say, an operational job into a managerial role and then up into a bigger leadership role, right? Then they have to manage those time demands in a different way, and they be able to think and act more structured, more organized, more strategically. And it's difficult for them to do so because there's little training around that as well. Right.
If you've ever heard people say things like, let me do it now before I forget.
Yeah.
Or if you've ever heard them say, or you try to set an appointment with someone that's too far out for comfort. So you say, oh, let's talk a month from now, on June 18th. And they say, no, June 18th? Are you kidding me? That's way out there. No, call me on June 15th. Because they don't have a way to manage a time demand that's that far out.
Right.
So in school, my hypothesis is that this causes people to fail exams.
So absolutely, because
you and I are here because we passed. We self-taught, right?
Yes.
And our self-teaching was successful, or otherwise we wouldn't be here on this call. But there are other folks who sat beside us in grade school or grammar school. They weren't able to self-teach themselves the same way that you and I were, and they failed their classes as a result. And then translate that into the corporate world, and there are managers who those two examples I gave, they're very true for them too. And to ask them to create a 5-year strategic plan is like, are you kidding? What? I can't even forget to go to an appointment a month from now.
Right. They can't even wrap their head around it. But also because, getting back to the point, is they can't wrap their head around it because they have zero space for thinking time because they're overwhelmed. So they're trying to escape this overwhelm. So coming back to our theme and our topic.
Exactly.
So we're coming to the end of the show. So tell me, what are the last points that you'd like to bring to the audience around, escaping overwhelm?
Right. So I mentioned that the first step was E for evaluate in the ETAPS model. The second is target, which is to set small targets, measure easy to hit targets for the behavior changes in each of the 7 fundamentals that I mentioned. Mm-hmm. The third is plan, to create a plan for steady improvement based on those targets, so that you're not trying to change too many things all at the same time. And the final is the one that people, I think, is the weakest of all, which is support. Which is, I know you have some awesome software to help support people in their behavior changes. We believe we're Superman when we sort of make these plans, when we're really more like Clark Kent. And we're all the research says, we totally overestimate our ability to change behavior. We think it's, having high willpower at the moment of commitment is what makes a difference. All the research says that we are fooling ourselves. We need not only support, we need backup support when the original supports fail. And we treat support as if, I don't need that. I'm the kind of person that when I make up my mind, then that's all I need. Bollocks! It's not true.
That's totally, I think people feel that when they reach out for support that it's a weakness.
Yes.
And so therefore, or like when you say, look, you need systems and structure, right? A plan is all about structuring things. And some people they get hives all over them when they think about having to plan something or, creating structure in their lives because they think it takes away from their creativity and their freedom, but it really opens it up, and they don't realize that it is that, those system support and structures that get us to where we want to go and give us freedom, give us creativity, give us, what for this show that help us to take back time.
Yes, and escape overwhelm. It's having great structure around us is what routinely keeps me anyway from being overwhelmed. If I didn't have that structure, I'd be falling right into the Zeigranik Effect over and over and over again and not really understand where it's coming from, which is, it's one thing to find yourself in pain and in overwhelm. It's another thing to have the wrong idea about where it's coming from and then solving the wrong problem only to see time demands come right back. And if you're not managing them, the feeling of overwhelm comes right back with it. The level of frustration that people experience is just not right.
It's not right, and it's each one of our responsibility to get ourselves out of it, because it's no way to live. The World Health Organization has declared stress a worldwide epidemic. And so we have to, and it's creating greater levels of suicide because people are at such a point of overwhelm that they don't know what to do, or the opioid challenge that we have, it comes from people not being able to cope, right? From being overwhelmed and finding that as a solution. So, message to everyone out there, as we wrap up the show is it's about escaping overwhelm. Doesn't mean escape in the sense of ignoring it, finding, something to numb the pain. It's not about cutting back per se, like you said. It can come from simplification, but it's really about upgrading our methods, finding the right systems and tools to support us with structures around us so that we don't have to rely on willpower, so that we can fall back on the support structures that are there to support us. So, Francis, thank you so much for being here. Do you have anything else that you want to point us in a direction of a URL or how they can find out more information about you?
Sure. My book is at http://perfect.mytimedesign.com. I have an audiobook that's coming out in the next month or so. Audiobooks take a long time to do. I've now discovered that. They're a killer. It's been going on forever. And my training is at plus.mytimedesign.com. And that's also available for anyone interested in doing the kind of, I won't say deep work, but it is kind of self-reflection that we've been talking about.
Absolutely. It's got to start there, right? You've got to have a clear idea of where you are now so that you can bridge the gap to where you want to be.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure.
And to all you listeners, thank you for being here. And we hope that we got you, down the first stage of understanding what it is that you need to do to where it's coming from, where overwhelm is coming from, a couple of things that you can look at in order to build off of the strengths that you already have, and really to look for systems and structures. One size doesn't fit all, so look for the systems and structures that are going to best support you so that you can take yourself from a state of overwhelm into a state of motion. Thank you all for being here. My name is Penny Zanker, and this is Take Back Time. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening. Today's topic is another opportunity for you to put the knowledge you learned into practice. Tune in again next week for more strategies that will help you have more energy and focus to get more done in less time, so you can continue to take back time.